Alright, I'm sitting here killing a little time before I have to head over to an appointment at the VA. This thing ain't working quite like I need it to. There we go. There we are. That's better. And I was watching a video on prophecy. I made a video a while back, posted on my YouTube account, and I'll probably post this one on my YouTube account. The title of it was something along the lines of Why I Don't Believe in a 7-Year Tribulation. Now that title might give you some cause for misunderstanding the direction that the video was going, but it really has to do with the length of time that the tribulation period exists. Now, I don't remember exactly what I said in the first video, but I believe in 3 distinct periods of time that all fit into the tribulation period, and 2 of them at least are 7-year periods according to what I've discerned in the scriptures using time references. You see, the problem is that pre-tribulation rapture tries to crunch everything that happens from Genesis chapter 4 through, 19? All into a 7-year period. Maybe it's further than Genesis 19. Yeah, it's about Genesis. Yep. So anyway, the point is, I don't have my Bible handy right here, so I can't double check myself here. But I believe that 2 distinct periods of 7 years are in there, and another period of time before them, which I believe we're already in, which is not as distinct as far as time reference is concerned. And this has to do with the so-called seal, trumpet, and bowl judgments. And the seal judgment and the trumpet judgments are really not in the same league with the bowl judgments. The bowl judgments involves direct action by supernatural forces to create the results, which is very devastating. Many pre-tribulation rapturists use the term the wrath of God in reference to the bowl or vial judgments, depending on your translation. The seal judgments have no time references, but both the trumpet judgments and the bowl or vial judgments do, and the reference is to 7-year periods. There are 3.5 years, 3.5 years making 7 years, and then another 3.5 years and 3.5 years making 7 years. And he uses various terminologies such as time, and half a times, 42 months, 1,260 days, all of which are 3.5 year periods, okay? Except when you have, and we're using the Jewish calendar, 360-day years, except when you have a leap month, which is an extra 30 days, which is 1,290 years. And that is actually referenced in the book of Daniel, in the last chapter of Daniel, 1,290 years. So, well, I believe that we are in the 5th seal right now. Right now. And we're already seeing the rise of war, pestilences, and all these things that are in the book of, in the 6th chapter of the book of Revelations. Okay, now, my main problem in getting people to understand this is this fixed notion that the first seal, deals with the Antichrist. For various reasons, that is not who that represents. Number one is that if I'm correct, and the rapture does not take place until the seventh trumpet, which is the last trump, which is spoken of by Paul as when the rapture takes place. Because there is no clear-cut reference to the term catching away or rapture in the book of Revelations. So you have to infer it from other texts of scriptures, including Paul's assertion, I believe in Thessalonians, that the rapture will take place at the last trump. Now he calls it the catching away, not the rapture. And rapture is an English word that's a transliteration, so to speak, of I believe it's a Latin word in the Latin Vulgate that was translated from the word that Paul uses in the Greek, which means to be caught up. And Paul says that in 1 Corinthians 20-something, 26 I think it is, that the rapture occurs with the voice of the archangel and the trump of God. All of those features, including the one about the last trump, are all identifiable in the book of Revelation, even though it doesn't use the same terminology as Paul does. It doesn't talk about the catching away per se. But right after the seventh trump, you have a chapter in which we see this 144,000 in heaven. Before that, apparently, they were on the earth. Okay? So, the voice of the archangel, there's a chapter 11, I think it is, talks about, I'm going by memory because I don't have my Bible here, chapter 11 of the book of Revelation talks about this angel that has 1 foot in the sea and 1 foot on the land, and he cries with a loud voice. And 7 thunders utter their voice, and John is about to write, and he's told not to. And it talks about the 2 judgments. It talks about the wheat harvest and the grape harvest. And the grape harvest is the wrath of God. Now, I believe this refers to the sealed judgments. The last part does. And so it talks about this transition from pre-rapture state to post-rapture state in the world. But there are 6 trumpets prior to that and also 7 seals. In order to really understand this concept that I'm trying to show to you, you have to look at the fact that in Revelations chapter 4, we are introduced to this character of a lamb as if it were slain, having 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God roaming to and fro through the earth. That's, I think, an Old Testament actually passage. This lamb, as it were slain, is given a scroll from him by him who's on the throne, a 7-sealed scroll. And this 7-sealed scroll is important to understanding the whole rest of Revelation because it is a proclamation of the King. God himself is the one that wrote this proclamation, and it has 7 seals. And I think a lot of people think of modern seals, which are based on old-fashioned seals, but instead of having a document actually sealed with wax in our day, what we have is a little string with a wax disc that's hanging on it, and an impression is made in the wax disc, dealing with whoever has the authority there in that proclamation document. Could be a charter, or for an organization of some kind, or a lot of different things. They use this kind of deal. But in ancient times, they actually used the wax to seal the document. That's where the term seal came from. We call that little disc that's hanging there a seal, but it's not really what the ancients meant by a seal. What the ancients meant by a seal, if you've seen the Fellowship of the Ring in the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf takes an envelope, has Odo put it in there, and he melts candle wax on there. Then he takes his pipe and he uses it as to press the seal. Now, in ancient times, kings would write a proclamation. They would roll up the scroll, and then they would melt wax on the edge of the end of the roll, where the roll ended on top. And they would use their signet ring to press. Later on, they would use an actual stamp because they'd have their secretary do it instead of them physically doing it. They would write it up and read it to the king, and the king would sign it and at the bottom, and then they would roll it up, put the wax on there, and use the king's little stamp to stamp the king's insignia onto the paper to make it official by pressing it into the wax. Well, this is a 7-sealed scroll, so it doesn't have a string with 7 discs hanging off of it. A portion of is written, then rolled up. That part is wax is put in, and then it's sealed with the signet. Then it's rolled up some more. After writing another part, it's rolled up some more, another seal. And so when he's breaking these seals, he's unrolling the scroll and reading it. And what we're seeing in Revelation chapter 6 is the unfolding of what he's reading. So he opens the first seal, and we see this rider on the white horse. He opens the second seal, we see the rider on the red horse. We open third seal, we see the one on the black horses. Fourth seal, the one on the, well, it's pale green, is what the word actually from the Greek means. I forget what it says in the King James. But anyway, the fifth seal unrolls, and what's happening is there's persecution in the earth that's leading to the death of saints, and they have joined a great company of martyrs from down through the ages under the altar, where they have a special place from God to because he's going to avenge them on the earth. And they ask this question: how long ago, God, holy and true, will you not judge and them that have killed us on the earth? And God says for him to wait a little longer until the rest of their brethren that should be killed also, and then the vengeance part would come. The next thing we have is the sixth seal, which is, from the description, to me seems like a large thermonuclear explosion somewhere near the planet, very close to the planet, but more than likely not actually in the atmosphere, maybe right above the atmosphere, to create this colossal EMP, electromagnetic pulse, which is going to do all kinds of things to technology. And we're going to have a situation somewhat like we had after the flood. Because what happened after the flood is that mankind was having to rebuild civilization after the destruction of the flood had destroyed the previous civilization that was on the earth. So now we're rebuilding, but now we haven't had a global flood, so much stuff hasn't changed. But the one thing that has changed, I believe, is that our technology doesn't work anymore. It's all based on electricity, and we're no longer capable of using electricity for various reasons, one of which is that because of the electromagnetic pulse, almost all electrical and electronic equipment that was on at the time, including power lines transmitting power, are destroyed, burned up. So the whole infrastructure is gone. That equipment that was not on, I believe, because of the peculiar properties of the EMP, I won't go into all the details of my explanation for this right now, but just say that they no longer put out the same voltages they did before, and so if you turn them on, they burn up. We're talking about generating plants. Other equipment have no power. A lot of equipment that has batteries in it, such as laptops, for instance, if they have power in the battery, I believe they will explode. The batteries will, which doesn't bode well for the piece of equipment, the laptop, for instance. So, our technology is knocked back to the steam age, literally. And we don't have the infrastructure for the steam age, and we would have to rebuild it. We would have to learn all over again how to do electrical generation and the technology to use electronic equipment. In fact, I suspect that the Antichrist rise to power has to do with eliminating that issue and the promise to give us back that old world with knowledge from the stars. Anyway, then we come to the seventh seal. Now, there's an earthquake with the seventh seal. Well, that sixth seal is a worldwide earthquake. So what is the significance of this earthquake? Well, it's probably an aftershock, right? From the worldwide earthquake, there's little aftershocks. And this one is of high enough volume. It may not be worldwide. It may only be in one location. But it is strong enough to, let's see what time it is. I got a VA appointment here in about half an hour. It's strong enough to register as a world event. Okay? Technology, of course, has been knocked in the cocked hat, so there's a lot of fighting going on between different groups trying to dominate and for resources and so forth that remain. I mean, if you want to rebuild a steam technology, you're going to need to burn coal or some other fuel. You might have an army sent in to secure a coal mine or a oil or gas field. Of course, the technology that is being used to do all of this with has been destroyed, so they're going to have to figure out new ways of doing it. We'll go back to older technologies. Most of our information nowadays comes from the internet, so they're not going to have the ability to access that anymore. So they're going to have to go back and look in old libraries and stuff and do research, and that means that information is become a premium and print information, you understand, and they would attempt to secure those resources for themselves. So information is a resource now, it will be then in order to build a lower level of technology back because nobody knows how to do it. This was the problem after the flood, you see. They had nothing but what was on board the ark to give, and that meant the people's knowledge and any information they brought with them, books, what have you, from the pre-flood era. Now, I'm supposed that Noah would have been somewhat careful about what information he carried with him, because there was a lot of things that were going on in the pre-flood world, we understand, that were not good. They were evil, okay? And he didn't want to have evil. But yet evil almost immediately rose again because he could not control the information possessed by the people that were on the ark. And we know that at least one of the three brothers showed some very unsavory characteristics, namely Cain. And then we have this rise of the pagan religions with the Tower of Babel, and the subsequent dividing of the peoples using the confusion of languages and so forth. So the point I'm getting at is that it took a while to rebuild a civilization, and I think by the time that they actually, because of all the infighting, gained the knowledge they needed, because they had no written knowledge, or not sufficient amounts of written knowledge of certain things, certain types of things, they never did recover much of the pre-Diluvian world's technology. And it would have been a technological society. I can go into that in another video. But the point is that we will see this same thing. And so when we see what's going on in the next series of commonly called judgments, the trumpets, we see, first of all, we see natural phenomenon creating all kinds of issues. And I'm not going to go into all the details on that now. And then we see these warring armies who have apparently regained some technology. And you say, well, I thought you said they're going to have to rebuild. Well, I think what happens is that a man arises in some country claiming to have knowledge from the stars or from some divine source. And this is not unprecedented. You know, you have people like Joseph Smith, Mohammed, so forth, that created false religions through this thing. And remember, Satan is always seeking to be worshipped by man. And so we'll have this rise of pagan-type religions. It might be Islam, it might be something else. Anyway, the point is that the final trumpet judgments, we see these armies, some of which have been interpreted by pre-tribulation rapturists as demonic beings or something. But the point is simply this: when the last trumpet sounds, poof, a large segment of the population of Earth is suddenly gone. Now, everybody's seen the Left Behind series movies who are Christian, I hope, even though I don't agree with their timeline. The shock that we see from the disappearance of all these people and the lies that begin to get spewed out there about what's happened. And there arises the beast, the Antichrist. This happens, I believe, after the seventh seal. Look at Revelations chapter 13 with the two beasts, one out of the sea and one out of the earth. And I'm not going to go all the details on there. This is the rise of the beast kingdom. Even pre-tribulation rapturists recognize this fact, although they have it happening in the 6th chapter of the book of Revelations with the rider on the white horse. The reasons why I don't agree with that. Then, many reasons. Then we see the rise of this beast kingdom, and apparently he's putting the world back together for 3.5 years using quote-unquote knowledge from the stars or from some divine source. And then after 3.5 years, we see the opening of the first seal. First vial or bowl, where this angel takes his vial and pours it out on this and pours it out on that. So this is the bitter dregs of the wrath of God. So they say, no, it is just the wrath of God, the true wrath of God. The 6th seal is not the wrath of the Lamb. That's a misunderstanding by the people of the world, because they've been taught all this pre-trib rapture stuff so long that this is what they're expecting. But we see the judgment of the great whore, which is a direct result of these angels' work. Because in the middle of the week, this treaty with Israel is broken by the Antichrist. Because the Jews refuse to give up their religion. They're more convinced than ever, I suppose, that it's true. More convinced than ever that their scriptures are true. But they have not, and many of them are turning to Christ, by the way, during this period of time. But there is also a group of the Jews that live in Israel that are not buying it. they they all kinds of wickedness comes forth, which is portrayed in the Left Behind series, right? And then finally, we have the opening of the last of the vials, and then Jesus returns because the world has entered into this battle of Armageddon. The peace kingdom has fallen apart. Man goes back to war. The Antichrist is trying to keep control, and it's anarchy. It's terribly powerful, and he has already entered into the temple in Jerusalem, breaking his covenant, and declared himself God, and the Jews have rebelled, and the whole world is starts going awry when all this happens. And finally, Jesus comes back, battle Armageddon, defeats the Antichrist forces mankind to kneel. There's that first preliminary judgment of nations, separation of the wheat, not the wheat and the tares, but the sheep and the goats. Then the millennial kingdom begins. All of this is written in that seventh seal. All of it is written in that seventh seal. So there's you an overview of how I see this thing. Go look in the book of Revelations. Read it yourself. Read with an open mind. Ask the Holy Spirit to show you. I can be wrong, but I don't think I am, because I went to the source. I didn't go to man. I went to God. Check it out for yourself. See if it doesn't fit what the book actually says and not what they try to make it say. God bless you. I'll talk to you again another time.